And so I'm sure that the title piqued your attention a little bit. And so tonight we are excited to bring Randi on the show to talk about the positive perspective of death. And so it's just going to be fun and new ways of looking at death from a different perspective. So let me start with my formal introduction. Hi, ladies. Welcome to the No Bad Days show, Simple Wellness for Women show. I'm Jolene Fisher, your host, and every episode of the No Bad Days show will give you a view into the life of another woman. And she'll share her stories, her triumphs, her struggles, and the lessons that she's learned along her path. And my goal as your host is to bring topics to you that are relevant and encouraging, because I want you to be inspired to be the hero of your own story. And this is why I introduce you to brave women doing hard things who are truly living out the motto of No Bad Days. And so I invited Randi Johnson to be here with us tonight. And Randi, she's a passionate human being. She's all about finding the joy in life and bringing out positivity in the people that she surrounds herself with. She is definitely committed to this topic that we're talking about tonight. And so I'm excited to hear more about that. But Randi is an attorney, and she has a law firm, Lilac City Law in Spokane, Washington. And this is where she really, truly feels like she can empower and impact society on a deeper level. And she has her own family, and her main mission in life is to truly empower people and take steps to protect and restore joy. So one of the ways that she's doing that, and we'll talk about tonight, is through end-of-life doula. And so this is a recent certification for her and something that she's been doing for some time to really help people process through that end-of-life experience. But we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about family planning and what that looks like. And so I'm so excited, Randi, for you to be here tonight to talk to us about all these things that we don't typically venture into. So
yeah,
welcome.
thanks for having me, Jolene. I'm really excited to talk about this. I don't usually when I get into these topics, it's very metered and we're talking about one specific topic. But if we're gonna, let the fire hose out and let me loose, I'll try not to go too far because not everyone has practiced for their own death. That's part of our training. I'm comfortable in those uncomfortable spaces, but I really want to share that because there's so much growth that happens, as when we allow ourselves to get uncomfortable. So thank you again for letting me talk about this.
Oh, you're welcome. Oh, thank you for being here. So one of the first things I like to warm us up with is a question about, just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, where you grew up.
Yeah, so I'm from Miami, Florida, and I was born and raised in Florida. I didn't leave South Florida until I went to college. I went to Florida State University, and then I went to law school in Portland, Oregon. I decided that was a little bit boring, so I moved to New York City and started my career as a lawyer. And I was there for about 3 years or so. Then I moved back to Seattle with a big law firm and met my husband. And then we moved to Spokane, Halloween of 2020, or 2012. That's our Spokane anniversary with a 4-month-old. And here we are. I've been here ever since. My mom and my sister and my brother-in-law now live out here. And we've got 2 little girls. And it's been pretty cool. I've got 2 businesses. My husband owns a business. He's a chiropractor here in town, and Spokane's home.
Awesome. Well, what was your favorite location that you've ever lived?
Let's see, my favorite location. I really liked every place that I lived. It really served me for the lessons that I learned in those places. I'm very content where I am now. I don't know that we'll be in Spokane forever and ever, but this is definitely home. We're rooted, bought the house, got the businesses, everyone's feeling at home. And, since I pulled my family from the East Coast, I think they'd be mad if I left.
Do you still have family? Oh, all your family moved over here?
No, just my mom, my sister, and brother-in-law, but my dad's in Florida, and I've got family in New York and in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is like my heart's home. So I try to go there every couple of years at least to check back in. I do have quite a bit of family out there. So it's nice to fill that heart bucket back up with that love. But as far as like every day, I think we're Spoke Night.
I love it. Well, Lilac City Law is the name of your practice, which is definitely a Spokane.
Yes, with my purple walls.
Yeah, exactly. You're there in your office.
Yeah.
That's great. How long have you been in practice?
I've been a practicing attorney since 2007.
Okay.
And we've been here since 12. I've had the firm since 2013, so 7 years.
Yeah, and what got you into family planning as far as all the things you could have gone into as a lawyer? Was that what you started with, or did you eventually get there?
I started with federal disability benefits, and Lilac City Law still does that. We do Social Security disability, service-connected veteran benefits for our wounded warriors. But several years ago, after I was a mom with an infant and a toddler, it came to my attention that I hadn't sufficiently done any planning for what if I pass, what if my husband and I are gone, or we're not able to care for our children. Well, who will? And what happens if you don't put your own planning in place? And to be mindful and loving and really intentional about the values that you can put forth on a plan, that if I can't be there to parent, I need to give some instructions for the care of my children, because nobody knows your kids like a mama, right? So you got to put that down. And so I got my own counsel and figured out, went through that process and was like, whoa, I do law for a living. Who else doesn't have this done that's a mom and dad of little kids? Oh my gosh, everyone. So we rolled that out, and gosh, it just really aligns with all the other things that I'm really passionate about. But I really think it fits very well into, we do guardianships for incapacitated individuals, and with the Social Security, it's just really all together. We're just protecting folks and making sure that the way that we love each other continues even after I'm no longer here.
Right. So if you have a young family in front of you and you could tell them, like, let's get it all out there. Like, how would you talk to, passionately to this family about, if they do this, this is what would happen. If they don't do this, this is kind of what would happen with your kids or your estate. Because we need to teach people really what they would be missing out on, or what the kids could grow up like differently if they don't plan versus if they do.
Right. So I like to start with that parent and child dynamic, that centered approach, as opposed to, your kids might not get the assets of the house, or at the end of the day, and I'm sure most parents feel just like me, I don't really care about any of the dollars and cents if my children are not with the people that we know, love, and trust. And I am responsible for choosing who those children go with. And I don't want that to fall in the hands of grieving, fighting, angry loved ones who are all just trying to do the best they can, but they're guessing as to what we wanted for them. I want to put that all down with guidance, with intention on paper. So I start with, hey, you've got little kids, hey, me too. They're going to be dependent on a grown-up, someone, for the next 15, 20 years, could be longer if I have a child with special needs. They might need a little bit longer to love on and need a little bit extra. And I say, well, if you didn't come home today from work and you've got a 15-year-old waiting for you, or what have you, do you have a plan? Do they know what to do? Does anyone know where your stuff is? Do they know, and also importantly, does anybody know what I would want for myself? Decisions for who takes care of me, where do I live, where do I die, which is also really an important question. There's so many things. And so when I have a family in front of me, we go through question by question. Okay, let's really just close our eyes and think about this. Let's paint this picture. In this scenario, what happens? And frequently, no, it's a really intimate, sensitive topic. There are tears, there's laughter, there's tears. And that's okay. It has to be okay because these are important topics. And if we have to give ourselves permission to go there so that we can really do this work in a meaningful way. So, we'll be in there for an hour to 2 hours sometimes, just writing it out. This is what I want for me. This is what I want for my 9-month-old. If I don't come home tomorrow, she needs to know what parenting decisions I would have made for her if I were here.
Wow. That's amazing. So we're talking about a will is what's going on with your estate, as well as what's going on with children. So, but running the whole gamut of ages and whether people have kids or not, what do you recommend is just kind of the baseline for people in terms of estate planning or family planning?
Right. So certainly if you don't have dependent children, we don't need to talk about guardians, right? We can just eliminate that part of the conversation, which takes up, at least in my office, a whole, like the biggest conversation, because I like to start there because that's the most important person if I can't be there for them. But if we don't have children to talk about, or they're grown, and they're making their own decisions now and everybody's great, I think everybody needs a will. Even if you own nothing, you lease a car, you rent a home, you're living paycheck to paycheck, honestly, you still need a will. Why? Because you want to say to the world, this Johnny is the person that I want to be in charge of whatever needs to happen. Something still needs to happen after someone dies. Let's nominate the person. Let's pick that person out that we trust, who's just going to be in charge of doing the paperwork or making those calls to, what happens with my body, for final arrangements. That's an important set of decisions too. So it's not just about money. It's also about how do we want to be remembered, and very much choosing that person sets the tone for how we're going to be remembered.
Yeah. So talk to us a little bit about how you came to the decision to become an end-of-life doula.
Oh, that's a crazy story. So I think a lot of expecting mothers have like wild and crazy dreams and visions when they're pregnant. And when I was pregnant with my eldest, who will be 8 next week, I just kept dreaming about like the transition and those chapters, and with birth being as sacred and holy a transition time where a woman becomes a mother, I think we need to bring more reverence and respect and holiness to the birth into whatever that next life looks like for you. And I didn't even know that was a thing. I just thought, oh, what a beautiful idea. Like if you could have someone just be there to support you at the end. And then the Googles, just started looking it up, and wouldn't you know, that's a thing. So I just went down this road researching. There's a lot of different, schools of thought around how we approach that, and different kinds of certifications based on different philosophies. I chose the one that really resonated most with me, and did that last year.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Congratulations. How many people have you worked with now through that process?
So interestingly, right as I was graduating, I graduated end of last year, then it was the holidays. So, I was just kind of formulating, how do I want to approach this? And then the new year happened, and I created a curriculum, a business course for new doulas who've never been self-employed and don't know how to start a business and wanted some help ramping up. So I took several students through that, and that was the beginning of the year. And I was like, okay, great, I'm going to get going. Oh, there's a pandemic, and you can't go with people in the hospital. So I got a little derailed, oddly enough. So sidetrack, but it has given me a lot of time to really think about, because there's so much news about death, and just realizing where my place is in this death positive movement. We don't need to treat death as you have failed to live. Like, there's nothing worse than dying. Certainly we don't want to anguish and pain, or see our loved ones tortured with, riddled with pain and anguish. But that's a quality of life conversation. We have to stop vilifying death. And if we can do that and come to it with a different kind of energy, you can bring joy in all spaces to the very end. And so it's been a helpful and growing time, just trying to figure out, okay, well, when we're allowed back in the hospital and have more than one person, one visitor per patient, because if it's between me and your spouse, I think your spouse should go. Yeah. Right? But we have set up some ability to do Zoom. Oddly enough, like even in a death space, we can still do that. Virtual vigils are a thing. Being able to hold virtual funerals are a thing, because people can't come together now where they would. And I think it's so important. So it's really offered me an opportunity to be creative and think through, what can I bring to this space? My particular interest in the transition of end of life is working with families who are needing to say goodbye to babies and children, and working with the young person, but also with their parents primarily, and helping facilitate that conversation energetically, spiritually, emotionally, because there's not even a term. I think death phobia is like the worst of the worst when it comes to parents who have to say goodbye to a baby, born or unborn children. There's not even a word for that. You have widow and widower. You've got, you've got terms for that, but you don't have a term for a mother who's miscarried, or a mother who has a stillborn baby. Like, there's no word for that. And that really needs to change. So that's the space I want to help be with that person as they're actively transitioning through that. So.
Yeah. And what about beyond just the day that person passes? How do you support people beyond that?
Yeah. So yes, of course, it's those last hours, the last moments, sitting vigil. I believe nobody should ever die alone. That's really important. Someone should hold the space there. But you're right. End-of-life doulas are frequently hired when a person receives a terminal prognosis. Maybe that's doctors never know, of course. It's like they never know when your baby's going to be born. They don't know when you're going to die either. But they have a sense based on lab work and objective measures. Maybe we think you have 3 months, 12 months, what have you. And at some point along in there, a person says, I would really love some support to help me have conversations with my brother whom I've not spoken to in 30 years. Or I'd really like someone to sit with me and help me make phone calls, or help me just cry, do that ugly, ugly cry that I don't necessarily want to do in front of my wife.
Oh,
but
awesome.
But you want someone to have to witness you. It's really important to be witnessed in our grief and to witness others in grief.
That's amazing.
How we can heal and reclaim our joy after a loss, is if we don't hide, we don't stifle you have to let it out 100 times if you have to, but it's okay. It's okay to cry. And I think that's also a space that end-of-life doulas can really empower our communities, is just to hold space for that. We have group, in ancient times, there used to be grief rituals, community grief rituals, and not because we're all centered around a person who has died, not a funeral, but like once a month, once a moon quarter, the community would come together and grieve collectively, grieve for ourselves, and not just for a death, but grieve the loss of an opportunity, grieve the loss of a job, grieve the loss of whatever. We lose so many things, and it's okay to just not be okay with where you are right now.
Yeah, and being connected into the community as to where people can find help for their grief after the loss of a loved one. So I'm assuming that end of life doulas have connections in the community
Yes.
of places they can go and seek.
Yes, we are connectors to resources. You know, we're not therapists, we're not medical professionals. We're here to support and to encourage and to empower. But certainly there are places where, hey, I think there's a physician that might suit your needs where you are right now, or maybe I'm seeing that you're making unhealthy eating choices. Here is someone a professional who specializes in this. So, you know, I'm just kind of there to help be that impartial person. I'm not your spouse, I'm not your child, I'm not your sister, and I'm not going to take your choices personally. I'm just here to see you make the best choices that you're ready to make.
Oh, wow. So for people who live in Spokane, we know who to come to, but for people who might be watching this that don't live in the area, how do they find an attorney that is going to be suitable for their family's needs? And then also finding an end-of-life doula, if that is something someone's listening to and they're like, oh, I want to find somebody in my area. Are there resources? And especially for the attorney question, how would you suggest people go about finding a qualified person for that niche?
You know, I think there are a lot of people, there are a lot of attorneys who do estate planning, right? But not everybody does it in the same way. I think it's okay to interview the law firm and the attorney that you want to work with, because from a period of time standpoint, you know, we might have the whole thing done from consult to execution in 30 days, right? But there's lasting effects to what we draft together, and you need to feel really comfortable just letting it all hang out. And, you know, it's like, and I don't think we as a society do this enough either, but you should really interview your doctors. You know, you shouldn't just like choose the person from the roster and be like, well, you know, they're covered under my insurance, I'll go see Dr. Smith. Well, you should really have a frank conversation and be like, do I like Dr. Smith? I'm really, you know, he doesn't really do it for me. I'm out. Go find someone else. And that's what consults should be used for. You know, you should really be like, are we a match? Do I like you? Yeah, I can work with you. All right, I'm going to tell you all my deepest, darkest secrets and tell you that, you know, my uncle so-and-so should never be around my children because he's an addict and a gambler and he steals money. If you don't feel comfortable telling your attorney that so we can be very clear what shouldn't happen, that's not your right person.
No, I mean, I would think people could feel like they could tell their attorney anything. It's attorney-client privilege, just much like a therapist, you know?
Oh yeah, absolutely. But from like a personality perspective, you might feel like, oh, this person might judge me, or they won't get me, or, you know, and then you find yourself withholding, and that doesn't help you at all.
No, it doesn't.
No.
That's right. How often should somebody revisit their will once it's done?
Oh gosh, I tell people not more than 3 years should go by before you dust that thing off and give it a read through. I mean, it's not fun reading, you know, pour a glass of wine, but, you know, things happen, especially when you're working with our families, because, you know, when you're in your 20s and 30s and 40s, things are moving super fast. You're buying and selling things, you're having more children, the people that you've nominated, if you initially nominated a grandparent to raise your children, but now that grandparent has passed away or they've become sick, maybe you're taking care of them, that's not a good choice anymore. That's not personal, Grandma. We just need to make some different choices, right? So this is really a time of life that you just got to look at it. Yeah, it's because things change, and even when they don't change, it's nice just to look at it again and refresh and remember. Yeah, so I would say every 2 to 3 years, or when a thing happens, you bought and sold another thing, you've moved out of state, you got divorced, you remarried, you know, all of these things are transitions in our lives that probably indicate a time to refresh the wording on your documents.
Right. For us, it was we adopted our son.
Right.
So it's like,
got a whole nother child.
Yeah, whole nother child, and that child needs to be included in the will because that would be terrible if we died all of a sudden and he was like left out going,
So what about me?
yeah. Oh, so tell us about how you walk people through the process of the will when it's just an individual you're talking to and you're saying, talk to us about your end of life procedures and how you want to move forward with that. What are all the things we should be considering when we're thinking about death?
Sure. So I think we all deserve the very best experience of death possible. Like, so far as we all basically know, we're only going to do this once in this body, having this experience. And for those of us who have given birth, like before I had my first child, I had never given birth before. And there are just things I knew I didn't know, right? So you have to ask questions, or you review things, or you look things up. We as a society don't tend to do that when it's coming towards end of life. And so from a high level, certainly questions like, what kind of life support am I willing to accept? How far am I willing to allow the medical community to come to maintain my body to stay alive? And for some people, that's like, oh my gosh, if there's a machine you could hook me up to, keep me plugged in. Okay, that's your choice, but you should at least have the opportunity to make that decision. And if you don't put these documents in place and set that forth in writing, how the heck would a person know that that's what Johnny wanted? They don't know. So, got to do everyone a favor, yourself, your loved ones, and let them know what you want. So that's like the high level. We've added some additional topics, if you will, issues to consider, like being on a ventilator, especially in light of COVID. Do you want to be on a ventilator? Well, what if this happens? What if this happens? Then you've got, on a kind of more granular level, we're thinking about, okay, well, someday this day will come where there's a day, 2 days left. If you had the choice, if we could, where would you want to be? Statistics show that around 70% of people would prefer to die at home. Well, most of us don't put this stuff in writing. And by the time that all happens, in its application, about 70% of people die a very medicalized death in the hospital, hooked up to all sorts of beeping things and lights and fluorescent lights and this and that, and people running in and out. And had you asked them before that happened, they would have told you that is not how they wanted to die. So it's very important for me to have these very frank conversations to say, if you could choose, like, it's one thing if, God forbid, you get into a horrific car accident, 1, 2, 3, and you die in an emergency room or something like that. But if you knew it was coming, I have cancer, I have a heart disease, I have something, and you've got a year or less to go, would you prefer to be at home? What comfort measures are you willing to accept? Do you want someone to come and visit you from the church? Do you want to only eat purple things? I mean, you can be very specific, but our loved ones just don't know. And it really relieves our loved ones of the heartache when they know that you've left them instructions on how to care for you. They don't have to guess. Caregiver fatigue is real. We will burn our loved ones out. And the more instruction we can say up front, I really gave some thought about this, husband. This is how I never want you to touch my feet. You can put some socks on them, like, don't ever touch my feet. But you can hold my hand and read to me. I would like that. Like, how lovely if we left our loved ones these notes with instruction on how we can both enjoy these last moments together.
Seems like an area, well, at least for me, I've left blank on my will. other than the most high level one that you've talked about, right?
Cremated or buried.
And the life support. That's the only one I put on there. I don't even know if I've gone so far as saying cremated. So,
and those are things like funeral directors will tell you, those kinds of conversations, those decisions will break up families, because child number one thinks, well, when we were at the lake last, mom was saying she wanted to be cremated, and child number two says, no way, we were picking out our headstones 2 years ago together, and now we have a fighting family.
Okay. Yeah, that's important to have it in writing, not just say it out loud.
Yes.
Randomly. What are some things that are binding in court versus some things that aren't, like things that are said, like cremation, for example? How does that get worked out in a family structure with no will?
It becomes really a circus, unfortunately, because nothing, whatever you told, your daughter, but your son heard differently, at some point a decision will have to be made, and whoever ends up being the person represented, the executor, that kind of thing, they'll ultimately probably be the person to make that decision. And then anyone, the person whose ideas about what mom wanted didn't get played out, it just becomes like lasting wounds on the family. And it shouldn't be over, someone's death.
Right. But if no will is in place when a family member dies, what happens?
So if no will is in place and you die intestate, the court, the state in which you live, also has a plan for you. So there's one. So you were asking me, like, what happens if somebody doesn't do anything? Well, I mean, it'll still all get distributed, but it's going to take probably a lot longer. It'll probably be more expensive, and likely somebody or others' feelings will get hurt. And they're all going to inject their own ideas of what the person who died wanted for them, didn't want for them. We should have given to Johnny. Oh, but he's an addict. Oh, but he already took the good china. I mean, they're going to fight over just every little thing. Oh, the cousin went in and took the pool table. That happened. It's because grief, unhealed grief, it just brings out, sadly, like some of the ugliest parts of us. When you don't really feel like there's a place, you didn't have that last conversation, and you wanted that I'm sorry, or you wanted that goodbye, and you're angry and you're sad. We don't always make the best choices in that space.
I can imagine that would be really difficult, and I haven't had to be in that space yet. My parents and my husband's parents are still alive, and I haven't lost a brother or sister yet, so no one directly related to me that I would have to take care of has passed yet. But one of the things that's crossing through my mind right now with our will, my husband and I's will, is that it's in a little folder downstairs in a downstairs file, and I don't think anyone knows where they would find it. So what are your suggestions on that? Just like explain that to us.
So someone other than the two of you needs to know where that is. In the Northwest, have safes at home where we keep important documents. I think safes are a great place to put it. I don't think we should put it in our underwear drawers or just, randomly on our bookshelves. It should be a protected item, because we never want it to be said that maybe so-and-so tampered with it. You don't want to get into those conversations ever if you can avoid it. So the person that you nominate to be your trustee or your executor, whatever, they should know where it is. Other people, especially our elderly population, they very much like the idea of those safety deposit boxes, at a financial institution. That's cool. You can do that. And so what I tell folks there is, if you want to have one of those, you should put that person, that executor's, the personal representative's name as okay to get into that safety deposit box. Otherwise, you've just sort of hidden it from everybody. So somebody needs to know and have access to get in there.
Because the only other way they would know is if they knew who our lawyer was, right?
Right. And most lawyers aren't keeping the originals to your wills anymore. So used to be that attorneys would hold on to the original, give you a copy, maybe, and then someone died and the loved one knew that, Attorney Johnson did this. But what ended up happening a lot of times, and I think why that habit has fallen out of favor, is that, people sell law firms, people retire, attorneys die, the building burns down, and now the attorney's like, oh crap, that was your only copy. That was the original, right? So at least for our office, we return to you your originals. We'll keep a cloud copy secured up there in case your house burns down and somebody needs a copy. There is still a backup somewhere, but I'm not holding the original.
Yeah, because like you said, something can happen to you, and if it were stuck in the cloud somewhere, not accessible, I mean, it has to.
Right. I think a lot of people have experienced this when you've been to, like, your family went to the family physician for 30, 40 years, and now the guy finally retired, and they're like, oh, where's my medical records? I don't know.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Well, is there anything else that you want to talk about that you're passionate about right now that we maybe haven't covered yet?
Those are my biggest passions right now, are to really invite these conversations into our homes. When we're sitting around having conversations about the state of the world, the really difficult conversations we're already needing to have about privilege and racism and resources and economy, we should and can also be having conversations to say, Mom, if you get sick, what do you need me to know? Help me help you and help us. I'm a parent. I need to nominate someone to raise these babies for me if I can't. And these are conversations we need to be having often, openly and often, and get it down on paper.
What if somebody doesn't have a lawyer? Can they just write it down? Is that even a binding document?
Oh, I don't recommend you do that at all.
I know you don't.
No, don't do that. There are some, like, we call them ancillaries, but there are some other documents that you can get, like Providence has a great one, like your last 5 wishes. You can fill that out. That document's really cool. My law firm, actually online, we've got a bunch of free resources, and one of them is a guardianship nomination form. There's a pulse. Every state has a pulse. That's the physician ordered life-saving. Oh, my brain's not working. It's the end of the day. But anyway, like an end-of-life document that you and your physician can have a conversation about around any life-saving or life-ending measures. I think those are important, especially for our senior population and high-risk population. It's very important that you tell your intentions. And I think also importantly, and a group, a demographic we never, ever, ever, ever talk about, are pregnant women. So if we're going to go so far as, and we should, to create a living will, and say, at end of life, my quality of life is very important to me, and if I have none, please allow my body to die, as I feel like my spirit has somewhere better to be, frankly. But my intentions, my decisions and wishes might change if I was also 7 months pregnant. I might wish to stay plugged in, thank you. But if you don't make that distinction, if you don't have those conversations with your partner, with your decision maker, you're leaving them with a real heavy, heavy burden. And that should be a conversation that you have with them beforehand.
Randi, I asked the audience if they had any questions for you, so we'll hang on here a while longer while we talk about some of these topics that you've just brought up, because one of the things that was coming through my head is what if people can't afford to hire a lawyer, that maybe they want to create a will, of course they have kids they want to protect and all that stuff. What would be an alternative that somebody could utilize if they couldn't afford the whole meal deal package?
So a lot of state bar associations have some templates and legal forms that are free for the public. So I would tell folks in any state to start there. There are also frequently through the bar associations, attorneys will offer pro bono time or low bono time to do these will clinics, especially for veterans, usually through the law schools. That's another good resource, is to contact a law school and say, hey, do you have a student legal clinic? The students are always supervised by a licensed professional, so you're getting still quality, legal, valid documents, because it's very important when we're doing estate planning that it was validly executed. It said the magic words it needed to say. It's not saying things that will invalidate other things. So you do want to be very mindful of it. It's not something you just want to write on the back of a cocktail napkin. That's not going to work for you. But there are some free and lower cost options for folks, typically through bar associations and law schools.
Okay, thank you. That's really helpful.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your family and what you're passionate about within your own family unit and what makes you tick as a mom and like just you as a person, not aside from what you do and what you're passionate about in that life?
So thanks for asking that. It's like we don't ask other parents about that. So I do think about that a lot. And my kids are young. I'm raising girls, and it's very important for me to raise independent young women, that they don't have this mindset that they'll be rescued or swept off their feet or a Prince Charming's going to come. I want them to feel very confident and secure in their own decision-making ability, and that they feel competent and confident in doing those life skills that like everybody should know. It shouldn't just be our sons that learn how to change a tire. It shouldn't just be our sons that know how to clean out a gutter or make appointments for things. Like we need to be teaching our girls how to do all of these things too, so that they feel empowered. Even if they don't want to, cool, I don't do those things, but I should know how to do them, right? So that's really important to me, teaching my children independent life skills.
I totally 100% agree with that. My husband went out of town not that long ago, and I was like, hey, girls, get in here. And I was remodeling my bedroom, and I was like, I need your help mounting this TV to the wall. And so I taught them how to use a drill and how to drill into the wall. And it was so fun. And I was teaching them new terms. They didn't know what the word flush meant. Like, make the nail flush with the wall. Or they're like, what is that word? I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. So independence, super important to me. Like, you got to know how to take care of yourself. And the other thing is to have a real healthy sense of play and adventure. There should always be time. And I think so many of us who are type A, and probably most of the women listening to this podcast, I'm sure are all, like-minded. And I feel like I just got to get things done, and we got to get the work done, and we got to do this. It's super important. And I have to really stop and remind myself that, look, those things are going to get done when they get done, but it's also okay to stop and play, because when I allow myself just to rest and to play and to enjoy the moment that I'm in, that's where we birth creative ideas. And if we're always go, work, there's no space for that. And it's a really good way, we workaholics, I'm a recovering workaholic, I'm trying to practice that daily. That's where we can hide out, because that's familiar. It's familiar for me to be busy and work. It's unfamiliar and uncomfortable sometimes for me to be like, I'm just going to sit here in the backyard and listen to the birds and see what happens. And so I'm really working. I'm parenting mindfully, consciously, when my children are small, to say, we don't have to work all the time. Like this homeschooling thing, like we were not doing school all day long. We were not doing that. And I'm not fretting about it. Like, they're okay.
Yes.
They were playing outside. It's fine. It's good.
Yes. One of my math assignments for my youngest daughter, who just turned 16, was we put a mural on her wall, and we had to measure it out. and mark like half the distance and use this a leveler and a tape measure and do some math. And so she's learning skills. I love that kind of school where you're busy doing something useful for life, but at the same time learning. So
yes, we cooked. That's math. There's instructions. We got to read the instructions. Like, okay, we baked bread. That's school. Cool. Let's go outside and play. Like, that's great. You know, so I think play and adventure, independence. There was a third thing. Oh, I am very mindful about how I talk about myself and my body around my children.
I love it.
I have never once used any derogatory terms about how I look or how I feel around them ever.
Right.
When we're talking about food choices, it's never because it's low fat or low calorie or whatever. It's just because it's delicious and it's organic and it's fresh and it tastes good. And when I go to the gym, it's to get strong and it's never to get skinny or to lose weight. And I'm very mindful of that. They're going to feel that regardless, but they should always, I'm always talking about like, oh, I look lovely in this, or I'm beautiful, and so are you. And we need to hear that.
So true. Oh my goodness. Positive self-talk, not negative.
No.
Positive self-talk. Because you're all about the joy, right? And empowering women, which includes your little women in your life.
They need to feel joy in their own little bodies too.
Yeah, I love that. Especially I'm raising 2 girls too. So I really, all the things you said, I totally 100% do in my life too. And now they're 16 and 17 and I see the fruits of that.
That's so great.
Yeah. Great. So I love it. Well, you are a woman of adventure. I see on your Facebook, you guys are doing all sorts of things outside and having fun as a family. So that's just what it's all about, having fun, making memories. As you, like, kind of a conversation I had earlier with my son and daughter today was that when I went and visited my mom and dad recently on a trip just last week, we brought 8 teenagers across the state to go visit my mom and dad. And I was like, they're still like 70 and 64. That's their ages. But you never know. Like, why not go experience life and create memories while you have them around? Because any one of us could turn around tomorrow and not be here. And so I think that's important to be mindful of as well. Creating lasting memories.
Yeah, that's what it's all about.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you being here today and sharing life story.
Thanks for having me. This was really fun.
Good. I'm glad you liked it. Interview style is less painful, right? It's like, just you, just your life, who you are. For now, we'll just say goodbye to each other and thank you for being on the call today, and we'll catch up later.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, bye, Randi.